Recently I was talking with a young man about Jesus' commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. And we were talking about how what this would really mean is that we would pour all of our energy, as much energy as we pour into ourselves, into our neighbor. You know, our money, our concerns. When the other person gets a victory, we celebrate it just as much as if we'd had a victory. And if somebody else is struggling, we struggle with them just as much as it was our struggle. And this guy said, now wait a minute, I don't get this. He said, I was trying out for the soccer team with a friend of mine, and I worked hard all summer. You know, I went to camp, I took lessons, I worked every day, I exercised, and my friend, he sort of drank his way through the summer. And yet when we both tried out for the soccer team, he made the soccer team and I didn't. And he asked me, are you saying that I should be just as happy for him that he made the soccer team as if I had made it myself? And just as happy that he made the captain so I had become captain? And I said, well, yeah, I think that's actually what it means. And he said, that's ridiculous, that's too much. He said, I did congratulate him. I went, shook his hand and congratulated him. I think that's enough. I think this is the problem with legalism, really. It's enoughism. It's saying, that's enough. It reminds me of when the law teacher came up to Jesus and said, okay, I'm supposed to love my neighbor as myself. Who is my neighbor? He's sort of saying, what's enough? What's the minimum I can get by with? That's enough. And we all do it. Conservatives say, well, as long as you go to church, and as long as you tithe, and as long as you don't cuss, and you don't go to movies on Sundays, that's enough. And liberals say, as long as I'm tolerant of other people, that's enough. We all have this enoughism. But Jesus answers the lawgiver by giving him the parable of the Good Samaritan. And the parable of the Good Samaritan, as you know, is a Samaritan's riding along the road. He finds a Jewish man in the road, and the Jewish man has been beaten, he's been robbed, he's had his clothes ripped off of him, he's dying. And the Samaritan clothes him, he heals him, he takes him to an inn, and he pays for his rest. And when we normally hear that parable preached, we hear, okay, you're going to be the Samaritan who's going to go out and help everybody. You're going to clothe their naked bodies. You're going to heal their wounds. You're going to pay for their hotels. And I don't know, somehow it doesn't really give me inspiration or power to do it. I end up always saying, okay, well, how much is enough? If I pay for 2 nights at the hotel, is that enough? If I give my spare coat, is that enough? You know, there's some way that there's this enoughism in us. I think the thing that we have to remember is whenever Jesus tells a parable, there's a place where we are in the parable and there's a place where Jesus is in the parable, and we often confuse it. See, I think the way we're supposed to understand that parable is that we are that man that's beaten, robbed, stripped naked, left to die in the road. And Jesus himself is the Samaritan who comes upon his natural enemy, and we are God's natural enemies because we've never done enough. We're his natural enemies, and yet Jesus clothes us, he heals us, he gives us rest at a hotel. When we see Jesus doing that for us, when we put Jesus as the Samaritan and us as the man beaten in the road, it also gives us a power to now use the parable and say, now I can be the Samaritan on the horse, and now I can help everybody else because Jesus has given me enough. I think the answer to our enoughism is to look at Jesus, and we look at him on the cross, and he's stripped naked so that we can be clothed. He's deeply wounded by the nails, by the death, so that we can be healed. He is given eternal agony in a certain sense so that we can have eternal rest. And I think the answer to enoughism, the answer to saying, it's more than just saying congratulations, the answer to enoughism in our lives is to look at Jesus and say, Jesus, you are enough. You are enough.